Travels by Jonathan Swift is one of the most iconic books of all times. These are stories about Lemuel Gulliver, who always dreamt of traveling around the world. And each time a violent storm claims his ship, he experiences a shipwreck and enters newfound lands and lives many alluring adventures and misadventures. Each time he enters a world he had never imagined could exist. It is no less than traveling in a multiverse where each time the protagonist lands up in a different adventure. Now, call it a children's story or a scientific fiction, all the four stories are laced with dark humor and can be best described as a satirical masterpiece. Now, these stories encapsulate some very important ideas. In a way, it persuades us to reform our own society. It emphasizes how we must challenge our cultural preconceptions. It teaches us not to judge people based on their appearances. It is about the acceptance of personal responsibilities and promotes the idea of self-respect, humbleness, among many other ideals. The stories are divided into four main parts. The part 1 is A Voyage to Lilliputian. It is the most popular stories and is often prescribed as a part of curriculum for school kids. It is a story of how a shipwreck swept Gulliver to an unknown island that was inhabited by the Lilliputians, who were described as just 6 inches tall. Interestingly, in this strange island, there are conflicts and wars over silly matters like which end of the egg a person should crack. In this land, there is a great emphasis on trivial matters. There are mishaps, and at the end, Gulliver is charged with treason. He spots an abandoned boat and is finally rescued by a passing ship. Now, Gulliver decided to carry some Lilliputian animals as a living proof of his adventures. The second part of the story is called A Voyage to Brobdingnag, as he enters a strange world where he is abandoned by his companions and he is left alone in a peninsula in North American continent. The land Brobdingnag is inhabited by giants, and here Gulliver himself feels like a Lilliputian. A farmer finds Gulliver and brings him home, and his beloved daughter Glunda Klitsch becomes fond of Gulliver and treats him really well. The farmer begins to exhibit him for money and finally sells him to the queen. The story is filled with adventures of him combating with the flies and wasps with his sword, and how he gets intimidated by a frog, how he is mistreated by a vengeful jealous midget, and finally a story about a monkey that snatches him. Here the protagonist travels in a small traveling box. In this part, Gulliver's ship is attacked by pirates and he finds himself marooned on a rocky island near India. He is rescued by a flying island of Laputa, a kingdom that is devoted to the arts of music, mathematics and astronomy. Now, this is a satire on bureaucracy and the Royal Society and their visual experiments. It is seen as a world where great resources are spent on preposterous research like extracting sunbeams from cucumbers or the softening of marble for the use in pillow. From here, he takes a trip to the island of Glubdubdrib. He gets an opportunity to meet the spirit ghosts of great men and ask them some interesting questions. He meets the likes of Alexander the Great, Homer, Julius Caesar, and learns about their regrets. Another interesting element in his encounters are the Strasbourg, the immortals who suffer as they do not have the gift of youth and are considered legally dead by 80 in spite of being immortals. In the fourth part of the story, he meets Houyhnhnms, a race of talking horses. They are the rulers, while the deformed creatures that resemble human beings are called the yahoos. When he starts dwelling with the members of the horse household, he begins to admire them so much that he feels this repulsion against his own fellow humans. Finally, he is rescued against his will and returned back home. But the experiences transformed him. He began to detest human greed and becomes a recluse. He begins avoiding his own family but showering all the love and begins speaking with his pet horses. Every time Gulliver faces armies and power-hungry kings, he feels desperate to return home. But as realization set in, he turns somewhat of a misanthrope. Right from children to the intellectuals and literature lovers across the world, there is a wide spectrum of audience that absolutely loves Gulliver's Travels. It is considered as one of the most fantastical adventure stories ever told.